this is going to be the first video in a series of videos for Basic C on Linux. And I was on the fence of whether to make this series or not, but since I'm making a series of tutorials on how to get into OpenGL and C on Linux, I thought it'd be worth making a basic series on how to start from nothing, or start from the very first hello world, and how do you get into doing graphics programming on Linux. So this was kind of inspired by CGen. I was on the fence and I got this tweet and I figured I might as well go along with doing it. So thanks CGen for the emotional encouragement. It doesn't take a lot for me to get prompted to do something. Tweet at me, I'll generally end up doing something. So the way to get started into C is there's really only one book to do it, and it's the C Programming Language Second Edition by Brian Kenningan and Dennis Ritchie. And Dennis Ritchie is the person who made the C programming language, so you really can't go wrong here. So I'm gonna use this as a base and kind of go through it as a supplemental series. I think there might be PDFs of this floating around the internet. I don't know if that's something you should do or not. Personally, I have this purchased on Kindle, so whatever, I won't say whatever means, but I definitely recommend getting a copy of this book and going through it. So the first thing we're going to go on do is to kind of explain the setup. So I'm running on a Raspberry Pi. This is a Raspberry Pi specific with 3B+, and this is just running Raspbian desktop. So the only thing I've really done here is change the desktop and connect to Wi-Fi. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come here, open up a terminal, and resize it to give ourselves a little bit more room. And we're just going to go sudo apt get install vim. So the only thing we're really going to need is a C compiler, which is already in the computer or is already installed on Raspbian. It's GCC, and we can type the command to install it, but I think it'll just say it's already the newest version. And then otherwise we just need a basic text editor. Now there are text editors. Let's see, system tools, accessories. There are basic text editors, and probably most people are familiar with, a normal text editor like this, where it's just a graphical text editor. We're going to be using Vim, which is on the command line. It might be a little different from what you're used to, but the reason for using Vim is it's a tool that uses a lot of shortcuts. It's very simple to get it started out with, and then the more you use it, the more shortcuts you learn, the more you grow with it, and it really will make your life easier the more and more you use it. So generally the learning curve is about 1 day to 2 weeks for the basic operation, which we're going to go over now in a second as soon as it finishes installing. But it's a simple tool. What I will say is I would just recommend not using a integrated programming environment or developing environment IDE, but I'll get into that later. So the first thing we're going to do is going to do vim. We're going to tilde and then .vimrc, and we can make a config file. And so my config file, I just do set auto increment, set tab stop equals 4, and syntax off. Now you can use whatever settings make you happy with this. Auto increment, I like it because otherwise the cursor will always snap back to the beginning of the line. Tab stop, 4 stops is about good. You can do it 2, makes it smaller. 4 is about right. 8 tabs is really far off. And then syntax, you can go off or on. Vim by default supports syntax highlighting, and for reasons which I'll get into later, probably in a later video. I just don't use syntax highlighting. And actually, I'll explain the reason now. The reason now is with syntax highlighting, it really makes it easy to show what's wrong with the program, what's right with the program, and um, you can write a lot of very convoluted code that's easy to read because the colors are separated. I forced myself to turn syntax off to see if that would improve my code styling, to say would I write shorter lines, would I block things out, and I found that my style improved subjectively by not using syntax highlight. So that's what we're going to do. So I forgot to describe how to operate this. You're going to press I to go into insert mode. So if we go here, we're going to go I, and you see down here, it'll be in insert mode. And once we're in insert mode, we can type normally, and the text will go in there. Once we're done editing stuff, we can go press escape, and that will turn off this editing mode. And then from there, we're going to say :W. So colon, and see it, the colon appears in the bottom of the screen, and then W, and then enter, and that will write our file. And then :Q, and that will quit our file. So the first thing we're going to do is make directory. Basics. We're going to change into our directory, which is basics. Now we're going to start with chapter 1, so we're just going to go 0, 1, and then enter our directory there. And then we're going to create a file called hello.c. And then here we go, insert sharp include stdio.h int main, open close brackets, open close curly brackets, and then we're just going to go print forget what programming language I was using for a second. Printf, double quotes, hello world, and with a line break, \n. Oh, alright. Sorry, I'm typing with one hand if that's not obvious. Holding mic with the other, so return 0. Okay, and that's our one. So we're going to go ahead and write that. And to make our lives easier, just in case you need to do anything, what we can do is cd basics, cd 01 ls. So, and then what we're going to do here is gcc hello.c. Okay, and if it worked, we should have an a.out file, and then we just do /a.out. Okay, hello world. So that's the end of this first tutorial. It's kind of all over the place, but basically you just install Vim or use a text editor. You create a file, a text file, which you denote as a .c file. You write some syntax, and then you tell the compiler to look at that text file. And if the compiler is able to say, hey, this is accurate syntax, then the compiler will create an executable for you. You run the executable, and it will do the instructions that you made for it. A lot of people will try to say, we'll try to describe assembly and a bunch of other complicated things around this time. I prefer to consider it magic. If you do it on the command line like this, you can kind of see the different parts working as they're working. And going back to what I said about an integrated developer environment, a lot of times you'll just have this big code that says, or it'll have this button that just says compile and run. You compile and run it, something pops up, you don't know what's going on, and you just kind of roll with it. So um, uh, this is magic, but you can kind of at least see the gears working if you do it this way. Whereas if you use a development environment like Code Blocks or Eclipse or something like that, this entire process is completely hidden from you. So that's the benefit of programming like it's 1970, is that you get to see some of the mechanics and the underlying work that's kind of hidden from you if you use more sophisticated tools. So that's it for this first tutorial. I guess I'll go on to start recording the second, and I'll see you next time.